The border crisis now hitting New York City's homeless crisis. For the first time in 13 years, New York City failed to find beds for dozens of men under the Big Apple's court-ordered right to shelter rule for single adult males. Well, joining us with more is Open the Book's founder, Adam Andrzejewski. Good morning to you, Adam. Welcome. So since May, more than 10,000 migrants have come to New York City, with at least 7,300 homeless and in the city's shelter system. New York City officials have placed migrants in 14 hotels, we're reading. One of them, a famed luxury Times Square hotel. What are the lasting implications for migrants and the city?
Well, this is an historic crisis at the southern border. And those just aren't my words. That's the words from Politico. Think about this. You don't have a secure border unless you know who's here, where they're at, and when they're going home. We don't know that, Jan. Over the course of the last 2 years, 4.4 million people have illegally crossed the border, and nearly 1 million of those have evaded border security. So we don't even know who's in the country. Now, the governors down in Texas and Arizona and Florida, they've been screaming about this, and nobody's been listening until they start busing the migrants to places like New York City. And now that's created a crisis in New York City in terms of resources.
Tell us about the costs involved. Where's the city getting the money to pay for this? How much per day is the city spending on these hotel rooms?
Well, think about this. 10,000 illegal entrants bused to New York City. That's a massive taxpayer cost. New York City's on their own to provide for this, and the hotel rooms cost up to $150 a day. If you do the math, that's north of $500 million a year. That's busting budgets in the city of New York. So the mayor's getting creative. On Tuesday, he called a press conference and he said, look, the city has 8% unfilled jobs for city employment within the city of New York. He wants to hire these migrants, but it takes typically about 6 months to get your employment paperwork and asylum paperwork and applications through the system at the federal level because of the bureaucracy. He wants to streamline this process and put people to work.
And as you mentioned, Adam, this has already been happening in Texas and Arizona for the past year, except they don't have all those hotels and the infrastructure to house migrants or the homeless for that matter. We even showed video from a Texas border town where migrants were living in tents because border facilities had become so overcrowded and overrun. Texas says they're getting no help from the feds. Is New York City being reimbursed from the federal government?
Well, they're not. All the localities are on their own. The federal responsibility historically in America has been to secure the border. But the Biden administration obviously hasn't secured the border. Look, at openthebooks.com, we did an oversight report on the number of federal officers with arrest and firearm authority. That number has peaked to an all-time high. Jan, there are now more than 200,000 federal officers with arrest and firearm authority, and that number exceeds the number of United States Marines at about 185,000. So it's not a question of resources to secure the border. It is a question of political will. And the Biden administration has demonstrated a lack of will to secure the southern border.
And New York City is unique in that they have essentially this court-ordered rule that states the city must provide shelter to all single men if they need it. Legal Aid and the Coalition for the Homeless blasted the administration and said in a joint statement, it is now clear that this administration simply does not have a handle on the city's sprawling homelessness crisis and the serious capacity issues in the Department of Homeless Services shelters. We are extremely alarmed, and as legally required, the city must immediately promulgate a plan to ensure that no further violations occur. Should the city continue to deprive our clients of this codified right, we'll seek action from the court. So now this could be a legal issue for the mayor. How pervasive is this? What's the homeless population in New York City?
So the homeless population, the estimates run up to 80,000 homeless people. But Jan, there's a difference between those that are sheltered at night, about 50 to 52,000, and those that actually live on the street, and those counts are harder to come by. Now, with an additional 10,000 illegal entrants bused to the city of New York, this has stressed out the entire system. And they're trying to add beds as fast as possible. But there is a silver lining here. And the silver lining is, for everyone that doesn't think America is a great country, people from around the world are dying to get into this country. And so I think, that just goes to prove the point that America, we have our flaws, but look, we're the greatest country ever created in the history of the world. People want to come here.
And on that note, Adam, I hope you have a great weekend. Happy Friday to you. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.